Good evening, YouTube. You guys are now watching another segment of the TheCaliEffect. Today, we're going to be doing Master Guide 3 card storylines, also known as the story of Duel Terminal. Now, I'm going to read this little note. This is the article of the unofficial English translation of the official Japanese Master Guide 3 card storylines. The following information is presented in a format closely mimicking the language and format of how the information was presented in Master Guide 3. Certain images were named in the book while others were not. Do not add/rearrange their names as we wish to preserve the layout. With that being said, I'm going to be mentioning it straight from the Master Guide as the official Japanese translation to English. There's not going to be a single card added or rearranged. So let's get down to it. File number 01, Duel Terminal History Original War. The unending struggle in the Duel Terminal world. The history of battles in the Duel Terminal world begins with Synchro Awakening. Ooh. Hold on, let's see what that is, because it normally shows pictures. Oh, okay. Obviously, that's the name of the set. It begins, with Synchro Awakening, and it unfolds from there. Why are these monsters who live there fighting? What is the fate they follow? What will the conclusion be? Let's talk about the story here. I'm already interested. Invaders suddenly appear. On this distant star, each tribe or clan fights to ultimately reign supreme. So all of these clans on the world are fighting to be the best. For the longest time, the war just waged on, with no one group holding advantage. However, this battle that no one thought would ever end was suddenly brought to an abrupt halt as the worms, invaders from outer space, suddenly crashed on the planet. So that's right, the worms were the first monsters to crash on the Duel Terminal planet and invade the planet, thus ending the war that all of these monsters on the original Duel Terminal world have had, and I guess they're going to be fighting against the worms now. Did not know the worms were that strong. To combat the approaching invaders, the ice barrier freed Brionic, the ancient dragon that had been sealed. It pushed back the worms with its power. Now, Brionic is the first of the ice barriers to be released. I'm not going to spoil it, but I can tell you what, once these ice barriers are released, they're really strong. Flamevale Urquazes. Against the landing worm forces, the stalwart warrior of the Flamevale sallies forth. The flames on his arms surge forth, scorching away the invaders. So, the ice barriers and the Flamevale monsters were the first ones to respond, with Brionic, the new release monster, and Flamevale Urquazes to combat these worm-like monsters. The form of an organization that extends beyond the tribes and clans. X-Saber, Mist Valley, Flamevale, Ice Barrier. To combat the invaders, the tribes and clans were forced to form a truce and unite together. The four tribes that were the most powerful forces on the continent formed their own organization, Ally of Justice. Bringing together each of their technologies and crafts, they began to develop anti-worm weapons. So, the strongest clans are X-Saber, Mist Valley, and Flamevale at the beginning of the Duel Terminal story. These four I want to say powerheads, were fighting for supremacy on the Earth. They all came together when the worms decided to drop and decided to make Ally of Justice, who I thought were their own archetype previously, or their own division that was fighting a peace in the war. But no, the Ally of Justice the Ally Adjusters are made from all of these four put together to combat the worms, which should be the reason why all of them fight against light monsters. So no, they're not to fight against light sworn monsters. They're here to fight against worms. The performance of Catastor, who was developed early on, was shown to be excellent, causing huge gains against the worms at every frontline battleground. The Optimus power reactors known as Genex began to move at the same time, which is why I believe the Genex archetype cannot work with any other thing other than other decks. For example, Undyne and Controller don't work for Genex. They work for water, quote unquote, ice barriers, guys. There's a couple other examples where certain Genex cards, they don't work with each other as they work with other decks. For example, actually, Ally of Birdman. Birdman will work more for Mist Valleys, not the Rising Air Current. That Mist Valley field spell card that when a monster is bounced to special summons, it works more for them than the Ally of Justice monsters themselves. Now, The evasion of the worms intensify. The evasion of the worms intensified with each passing day, causing the fight to spread across the continent. Not even the forest where the peaceful Notoria lived was an exception. Originally, they were a tribe who disliked fighting, but they were forced into combat in order to protect their home. Uh-oh. Now you got the true badasses in the whole dual terminal story. The Notorias are some of the strongest of the strong, but they don't like to fight. But you came in our force, so you can get your ass handed to them. Notoria Leodrake, with claws that tear apart and fangs to crush the enemy, he uses them to protect the Notoria forest where he and his friends live. I want you guys to keep an eye on Notoria Leodrake. He's an interesting card. Spoiler, spoiler. Ally Mine, an unknown substance that was gathered from meteorites. The worms rode down from the stars. Because of this, the Ally Justice machines had their processing and brain powers increased by leaps and bounds. So the Ally Mind is a unit that they place into the Ally of Justice and the Genex to make them stronger. Ally of Justice Enemy Catcher. Rather than annihilating the worms, the engineers shifted their focus to capturing them and analyzing them in an attempt to use the foreign invaders to further strengthen the Ally of Justice. Okay, that's pretty cool. Miss Valley Thunderlord. Upset with the premise of capturing and using the enemy, Miss Valley began to grow distant from the others. They began to desire only fighting alongside each other. So out of the four groups, the X-Sabers, the Ice Barriers, the Miss Valley, and who was the other guys? The other guys are the Flame Veil. The Miss Valley didn't like that the X-Sabers, the Flame Veils, and the Ice Barrier would rather capture the worms and use them against each other. They just wanted to kill them, so they branched off. I can understand that. And a cacophony of wars on the surface caused the fabled, who have been sleeping deep within the earth, to reawaken. These gods lended their hand against the invaders, but it was all in the name of fulfilling their own ambitions. So, out of anywhere, the fables just appeared and are like, hey, we can help with you guys. But in the back of their heads, they're already thinking, yeah, if we get rid of the worms, if we help them get rid of the worms, all four of the major tribes will be weakened, which means we might be able to take advantage. After having watched battles desolating on the grounds below, Valkyrius descends to the nearbound realm of Jirax. Okay, what are you doing, fabled monster? The invasion of the worms has barely affected the Jirax and the fabled, but the wicked gods suddenly struck. The Jirax fought back with flames that covered their bodies. So the fabled attacked the Jirax for no apparent reason, and the Jirax fought back. Genex army. Genex, which were able to stay the ever-evolving worm invaders, modified their body into something more suitable for combat. Okay, so the Genex are moving on up. The world is swallowed up in chaos. The advent of the fabled, along with the worms, drove the world to a height of chaos and confusion. Even when they've been defeated time and time again, the worms reappear the next day like crashing waves in the midst of the storm. And with the fable interfering in the fights as if to ridicule them, those who fought found themselves increasingly fatigued. So I guess this is what the fables are doing. The whole war is against the worms, and the fables decided to join the monsters that were previously on the field or on the world, which I want to say the Ice Barriers, the Flame Veil, the Mist Valleys, and the X Sabers. But they're running around just attacking people for no apparent reason. They want to weaken the armies on the world, so probably they want to take over the whole world themselves. Appearing on the bloody battlefield where the invaders and the current tribes battle, they perform indiscriminate hit and run attacks. It seems they enjoy causing chaos on the battlefield. So yes, the fables are just want to see the war. Some people just want to see the war burn, and fables are one of them. They don't care who they hit, they're just hitting everything. The Gen X reached the end of their self-improvement, taking the figure of our Gen X after attaining a new power. While they don't have some output in terms of being power reactors as the Gen X, their combat capabilities have skyrocketed. So Gen X have reached the height of their abilities going into the R Gen X, and they're just ready to fight. There's really nothing else to say. Now, the second dragon of all dragons are released. Gungnir, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. With more and more soldiers continuing to be slaughtered, Ice Barrier released its second dragon. Its breath can turn thousands of enemies instantly into ice sculptures with which then shatter. I'm sorry. This is the second ice barrier to be released. I would really watch out for these ice barriers because you have to think, if the ice barriers are being held back, even even while the war is going on, the ice barrier people must know that these dragons are extremely powerful. Their first dragon they released was Brionic, but they didn't release it when they were having a full-fledged war against the other three major tribes. They released it when the worms was devastating anything. So that says a lot about, first, the ice barriers being able to know that they want to win a war, but they don't want to win a war with the ice barrier dragons because they're so powerful. And B, the intensity of the fables and the worms destroying the world, so the ice barriers are forced their hand to release these type of dragons that are extremely powerful. Gungnir is the second. Reinforcements appear in the Mist Valley. Having cut themselves off from the ally of justice, the Mist Valley clan had been fighting without help from anyone else, forcing them into a difficult battle against the unending hordes and invaders. Unable to call for aid, however, the suddenly appeared from a gust of wind. These troops that rushed to help the crisis of the Mist Valley were the legendary Dragon Knights Dragoonity. So, since the Mist Valley distanced themselves from the Allies, they were really backed up in the corner. All of a sudden, these Dragoonity legions, Gay Bolg, Vajriana, why are they being helped by Gay Bolgs and Vaginas? Anyways, a family who passed down the secrets of the dragons, the Dragoonity are said to be able to become one in body and mind with their dragons, said to dwell in Dragon Ravine, a place whose existence has practically become a myth. The Dragoonity are said to appear in the midst of turmoil and unrest. So these guys only appear to help out with the cause, with the allies, which I'm not really saying the allies, I want to say just the Mist Valleys. They help the Mist Valleys because, first of all, they're in the same region. Mist Valleys are in a Mist Valley. The Dragoonities are in a ravine, I'm assuming by a Mist Valley. So they saw the world at an unrest and they decided to come from the ravine to come down and help. The final battle against the worms, all right? It's either him or us. It's either them or us. The invasion of the worms became increasingly strangely sporadic, but the tribes and clans hurried on constructing their ultimate weapon, suspecting a final battle was in order, and then a gigantic anonymous worm that no other up to this point could be compared to emerged. Uh-oh. Prior to Zero appearing, it detected a spatial distortion. I'm sorry. From a tear in space, an object with mind-boggling mass appears. Uh-oh. Worm Zero. Zero is reported to be consuming the other worms, growing stronger and stronger, swallowing everything. It kills merely from moving, and the tribes can no longer hide their despair. Ally of Justice Decisive Armor. The trump card of Ally of Justice, the quickly built supreme anti-worm weapon, is sent to the ultimate decisive battle. As the battle swings back and forth, it finally ends with a barely defeating Worm Zero. I'm sorry, it finally ends in it barely defeating Worm Zero. So the allies finally, by the hair of this much, get to beat the worms after that whole battle. That is extremely exciting to see. I did not know that worms were the bad guys in this whole thing. So that's extremely interesting. Is the rest still about worms? Okay, I guess it's about fables. We can read fables. This is a long line. Free from the threat of worms, the tribes and clans were uproariously joyous, but their joy did not last long. The fabled, who had been watching, finally made their move, and a scheme of world conquest. On the other side, the Arginex and the Ally of Justice negotiated and agreed to work together. So, Fable Unicorn. So, basically, after the allies have wasted all of their resources fighting back the worms, the fables decide, like I said, this might be a really good time to take over the world because everybody's weak. So, I'm not going to lie, it's a douche move, but It's war. All's fair in love and war. So yeah, I can't really blame them for that. The Fabled appeared almost at the same time as the wicked gods were completely revived. Taking orders from Fable gods, they used their magic serving as the vanguard of an invasion. New weapons were made to destroy the Fabled, whose numbers continue to surge ever further than all over the planet. These weapons were made combining the powers of reactors of the Argenex and the technology used to make the Ally of Justice. So I'm sorry, to get this straight, the Gen X are a separate tribe. They're actually a tribe within the world. The Ally of Justice are the monsters made from the Flame Veil, the Ice Barrier, and the X Saber. No longer the Mist Valley, because you have to remember the Mist Valley separated themselves. So these are Gen X, or Gen X ally monsters, are to fight the Fabled monsters. Uh-oh. The Jirax, the victims of the most intense attacks of the conquest scheme, transformed their bodies into meteors and completely razed the land where the Fabled dwelt. But from the ashes, a new fire was born, the Neo Flamevale. Alright, so they turned themselves into meteors and killed themselves and then became Neo Flamevale. Uh-oh. The wishes of those who lost their bodies by dropping the meteor awoke the god of the ancient flames. The tribe of fire becomes one with the ancient deity, swooping away the fable that remained in the realm and the world. Due to the endless struggle, the world has been ravished. Based on the situation, the Ice Barrier is determined to break the seal of Trishula, the final ice dragon, without knowing that doing so would lead to the destruction of the entire planet. Uh-oh. I told you guys, watch those dragons. The voice of the medium was unable to reach the rampaging ice dragon. The mirror was powerless before the ferocious dragon. Awakened from its slumber, the oldest and the strongest dragon, Trishula, rages out of control of the ice barrier. In the end, it froze over the entire planet, causing time to stop on the planet. And that is the end of the dual terminal story, or file number 1 of the dual terminal story. That's an extremely interesting story. But to wrap it up, the worms invaded the planet, with the 4 main powerhouses being the Flame Veil, the X Saber, the Ice Barrier, and the Mist Valley. They all rallied together to fight the worm. The Fabled, seizing the opportunity, attacked the Drax not only to weaken the Drax when they came back, sporadically attacked both the worms to still keep a somewhat truce with the allies, and also attacked the allies in the art of confusion to still maintain a war and weaken them. The allies, by the skin of their teeth, beat the worms, and that's when the fables decide that it's time for us to take over the world since everybody is weak. So that being said, throughout this whole time, the Ice Bears have been releasing these special dragons. The first one, Brionic, to fight the worms. The second one, Gungnir, to fight the worms and any other invaders. The third one, Trishula, because Trishula was the strongest of the all dragons and could not be controlled. It froze the whole world. That's the story of Duel Terminal 1. Can't wait to tell you guys number 2, number 3, and any other forward. Let's say next week, if I get 40 likes, we'll do the next episode. Thank you guys for watching another segment of The Cali Effect. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy.